6. That's it. That's the number. Not 14, not a baker's dozen minus 1, 6. The Department of Defense just went full Marie Kondo on its critical technology areas, looked at 14 of them and said, "Do these spark joy for the warfighter?" Apparently only 6 of them did. And look, if you're a small business trying to break into defense contracting, that simplification might just be the best news you've heard since you found out we exist and our services are free. But we'll get to that. This is Rick from MoveAmerica, and no, from MoveAmerica is not my real last name, but my real last name is spelled exactly how it sounds if you're having a minor stroke. And this is the Pathways to Partnership podcast.
Welcome to Pathways to Partnership, the podcast powered by MoveAmerica. Here, we explore the intersection of industry, government, and academia, where collaboration sparks innovation and strengthens our nation's defense industrial base. Each episode will bring you thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and real-world success stories that showcase the pathways to building a stronger, more innovative defense industry. And now, here's your host, Rick from MoveAmerica.
So, we recently did a webinar on this whole situation about critical technology areas, or as we like to call them, CTAs, because why not have another acronym? And I brought in the big guns. Well, not me. My entire team actually did. Retired Colonel Willie Burgess. He's the Deputy Director of our Rapid Innovation Accelerator down in Miami. Now, Willie's resume reads like a Tom Clancy novel had a baby with a LinkedIn influencer's fever dream. 30 years in the Air Force, 4 U.S. embassies, time at FEMA, Southern Command, Toyota, and Amazon. This man has literally protected America, represented our country abroad, and responded to disasters. Also, he figured out how to get your paper towels delivered in 2 days. If there's a Most Interesting Man in Defense Contracting Award, I guarantee Willie's going to be up for it, and he's going to be one of the finalists. When I introduced him during the webinar with all those accolades, here's how he responded.
Probably one of the things, the reason why it's so diverse, maybe because I can't hold a job. That could be the reason why.
See, that's Willie in a nutshell. Well, no, Willie in a nutshell would be like, hey, get me out of this nutshell. He's humble, he's funny, and he's absolutely the guy you want explaining why the Pentagon reorganized its technology priorities. So let's go ahead and get into that. First question you might be asking, though, is why Miami? I mean, when you think defense innovation, you probably think Northern Virginia, maybe San Diego, possibly that one strip mall in Huntsville, Alabama, where apparently half the missile defense industry operates out of. But Miami, isn't that just beaches and nightclubs and people who are way more attractive than, say, you or me? Well, yes, but also it turns out there's a serious tech ecosystem down there. Here's Willie explaining why the DoD decided South Florida deserved its own innovation accelerator.
So why did DoD support the creation of a rapid innovation accelerator in Miami? Florida's innovation ecosystem, right? They think in South Florida there is an innovation ecosystem and they want to tap into it. We don't always have access to it. And then they say about access and succeeding in federal contracting opportunities, right? But again, advancing U.S. national security priorities, that's always going to be the key. And that's going to be a theme that you're going to see throughout their presentation. Now, one of the things that we always do is, and my boss is always asking me, Mr. Earl, and MoveAmerica, is are we aligned with the strategy? And yes, right? We are implementing the OSBP strategy, the Office of Small Business Program strategy says they want to implement a unified approach for small businesses. So that's by having the RIA Miami allows us to do that. They want to align with national security priorities. Mr. Earl is always beating me up, make sure that our companies understand, right, that to meet the requirements of the warfighter. And the strengthening awareness of government opportunities. And we say government on purpose, right? Because national security could be Department of Defense, but it could be Department of Energy, Commerce also has an important part of it. So all these agencies have an important.
DoD is basically saying, hey, innovation is happening everywhere, not just in the usual suspect places. And they put their money where their mouth is by setting up shop in Miami. Oh, and here's the part that still blows my mind every time I say it. The services at RIA Miami, free, as in $0. As in, why aren't you already signed up for this? We're basically the Costco free sample table of defense consulting, except that you don't have to pretend you're going to buy the full box of frozen whatever it is they just gave you a sample of afterward. All right, so let's talk turkey, or in my case, since I'm doing the carnivore thing, let's talk ribeye, the critical technology areas. Now, important caveat here, these aren't contract requirements. This isn't an RFP. You can't bid on one quantum, please. Think of CTAs as the department's way of saying, hey, if you're wondering where to point your R&D dollars, here's a treasure map. X marks the spot, or in this case, 6 of them. Willie breaks it down.
Now, let's talk about critical technology areas here in a second. And we said there's a change, and I'll tell you later on what is a change. But first, we're going to go into them.
So we've got applied AI, quantum and battlefield information dominance, integrated sensing, advanced computing, hypersonics, and directed energy. My goodness, that sounds like the buffet menu at Stark Tower.
The Office of Undersecretary of War, Research and Engineering, and that's going to be important. We'll highlight that here in a second. It wants the United States military to remain the most lethal and dominant fighting force, right? They're committed to bringing cutting edge technologies that meet the urgent demand of today's war fighters. And then what they did was they identified the critical technology areas to focus these efforts, right? And if you read the strategy documents, it says represents the forefront of innovation to deliver immediate, tangible results, the speed of relevance. You'll hear that over and over again. You hear the Secretary of War talk. He'll always say it that way. And they want speed of relevance right now. As you can see, these are very 6 broad areas, right? And you can fit an elephant through all these different areas. And what they're saying is, and here's another part that I said at the beginning. This is handled by the research and engineering, right? So research, what they're saying is they're telling the private sector and small businesses, this is where we want you to focus on your research. Remember, acquisition is done in a different directorate, a different department, right? Now, obviously, acquisition will be aligned with what research and engineering is asking the small business to do.
And as Willie said, these categories are broad, like really broad. Like you could fit an elephant through them broad, which is actually good news for you because it means if you've got innovative technology, there's probably a CTA home for it somewhere. You don't need to be building laser cannons, although honestly, if you are building a laser cannon, call us immediately. I'd love to see that thing. Okay, so we've got these 6 fancy categories, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, hey, Rick, this sounds great, but my company makes software for insert very specific thing here. How does quantum battlefield information dominance even apply to me? Well, that's a fair question, and Willie actually gave some examples that brought this one home.
Intelligence requirement here or give me the product, right? This is just a kind of a guide to allow, if you're a small business and you want to do some research, you're in this area, this is where research engineering are handled. There used to be 14 and now there's 6. And I'll tell you here in a little forward here in the briefing why that changed from 14 to 6, right? So for example, right, when you see applied artificial intelligence, right, they're saying is, okay, we want our command and control systems, right? You can imagine the amount of information that flows in and out. So there could be different AI applications that could apply in any of the command and control systems, right? It doesn't define a requirement for a contract with DoD. It just talks about in general. I used to work logistics in the beginning of my military career. So of course, and then I worked for Amazon, right? Would DoD benefit for some of the logistics or innovations that companies like Amazon or small businesses have developed to help maintain the database, right? Because they want to make sure they have access to critical resources, right? Whether it's chips, critical minerals, and all that, and to make sure it gets to the battlefield. When you talk about quantum battlefield information dominance, well, that's a great title, and what it means, right? But what you see there when they're saying modernizing communication and sensing technologies, right? How do I make sure that the information and the significant amount of information is provided to an AWACS aircraft, which is like a radar aircraft, to a soldier on the ground, to people on the battleship, right? To the sailors on the battleship at the same time, right? So there's many applications that the private sector has that maybe could help them in those areas. I'll give you an example. We have a client right now that actually is not even through a contract, but they were helping DoD through a subcontract.
I love that cell phone chip story. Here's a company that said, hey, when our military folks deploy overseas and use local cell networks, that could be a security problem. They weren't trying to build the next F-35. They found a specific problem, solved it, and now they're contributing to national security. That's the play, folks. You don't need to reinvent warfare. You need to find a problem within these broad areas and fix it better than anyone else. So why does the department care so much about getting small businesses into the defense industrial base? Is it because they're just really nice people who want to spread the wealth around? I mean, maybe some of them are, but the real reason is math. Scary math.
Part of my military career, right, I ended up working a lot on strategy. And I always say, go to the strategy documents. Department of War has the acquisition transformation strategy, national security strategy, and it'll tell you why and why we are supposed to revitalize defense industrial base. So if you go to the national security strategy, there's a paragraph, and there's, by the way, it's all online, but reviving our defense industrial base, right? They want a strong, capable military that they say a strong cannot exist without a strong, capable defense industrial base. So they show it by saying the huge gap that demonstrates in recent conflicts between a low-cost drone and a missile. I mean, look at the technology and the amount of cost in those two, right? And DoD knows that Department of War, DoD can't focus or get the solutions to all these things. And that's why they need a strong defense industrial base. And the strategy goes on and says, in particular, we must provide our warfighters with a full range of capabilities, ranging from low-cost weapons, can defeat the most adversaries, up to the most capable high-end systems, and for conflict with a sophisticated enemy, right? So again, they're calling out to the defense industrial base to come up with this. And then if you go to there's another document, the acquisition transformation strategy, right? So you have all these strategy documents, and it starts coming down eventually to a planning document, that we have for warfighting. But what you'll see now is, okay, now you have the national security strategy, the acquisition transformation strategy, right? Acquisition. Now, we're not necessarily talking research engineering, says we want more companies to build military equipment, make easier for new ones to join in and come up with better ideas. Work faster to win contracts, deliver results faster. So they said that the industrial base was pretty much 51 prime vendors following the Cold War. Now they're just down to, in the big categories, to 5 prime contractors. So you can imagine that's not good. That's not a strong defense industrial base.
51 down to 5. Let me say that again for the people in the back. 51 prime defense contractors after the Cold War, down to 5 today. That's not a diet. That's corporate anorexia, and it's a national security problem. So when the department creates programs to help small businesses break in, when they set up accelerators in Miami and Rhode Island and Dearborn, when they make services free, this isn't charity. This is them saying, we desperately need more players on this field. The door isn't just open. They're basically standing there with a welcome mat and a fruit basket. All right, so you're convinced. You want in. But how? Because if you've ever tried to navigate Defense Department programs on your own, you know it's like trying to read a menu written entirely in acronyms. SIBR, SITR, DIU, DARPA. It sounds like someone fell asleep on a keyboard. And if you did, wake up. Well, Willie told us about some of the actual pathways.
There are times where we need the small business to understand their requirements. And you're going to have to help meet these warfighter requirements and all these programs that exist, and why we exist is to help you focus on that. And then if you're doing research or you have some innovative product that has not built up, it's still in the concept idea stage, our research and engineering community, right, where the CTAs came from, will help startups, right? So our job is to help you get into that community. And those are the different programs we mentioned earlier about small business innovation research and technology transfer. Again, the end goal is to meet warfighter requirements. And sometimes, again, as a former colleague, a DoD person, right, or a military officer, when we say warfighter, that doesn't mean only the guy with the gun, right? It means the mechanics, the pilots, the logistics officer, the supply officers, they're all part of the war fighting, right? There are some that we'll say called the tip of the spear, right? Those are the ones with the guns and going in to get the bad guys. But, the whole defense industrial, the whole Air Force is supporting, right, that specific operation.
Defense Innovation Unit, Small Business Innovation Research, Technology Transfer Programs, the Replicator Program with those low-cost drones, competitions, exercises. There's a whole universe of opportunities out there. And I'll be honest, even Willie admits nobody can track all of them. That's literally why we exist. We've got people who've spent entire careers in acquisition, in missile defense, in logistics. Our job is to know this stuff so you don't have to become a DoD archaeologist just to find the right program. Okay, let's address the thing that prompted this whole webinar in the first place. The change, the big switcheroo, if you will. The why did 14 become 6 question. Because if you've been paying attention to this space, and if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you have, or you're very lost and thought this was a true crime show, you might remember there used to be 14 critical technology areas. So what happened to the rest of those CTAs? Well, here's Willie with the explanation.
There used to be 14, and now there's 6. But why is that? Because there's another list. Department of Defense, we have lists, lots of lists, right? But my colleagues, Rick and Megan, asked me, hey, can you help me define the term emerging technology, which has been used by the U.S. government in the past, and it's different than critical technology areas? Well, sometimes I like to put the documents and tell you what these sorts of documents so you can double check me and go ahead and do your own research. But the White House, right, they come up with a certain, again, just like a national security strategy, they came up with a critical and emerging technology list, but for all the agencies, right, not just DoD, right? So what you see with critical technology areas are the DoD research and engineering focus, right? But the Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Department of the CIA, all the intel agencies, they have different emerging technologies. And so this list, the critical emerging technology list, was a way to capture all the agencies, right? So in the defense, the way we define it is written there on the slide, novel and rapidly advancing technology, show potential for future military relevance, scaled across the force, right? So the White House came up with this list, and this was a critical emerging technology list, which is in a subset of advanced technologies that are potentially significant in the U.S. national security. Again, that's why all these other agencies are also playing part in U.S. national security.
So here's the key to understand. There are 2 lists. The Critical and Emerging Technology list, that's the White House's list, and it covers all federal agencies, energy, commerce, homeland security, the intel community, everybody and their mother and their brother and their second cousin 3 times removed. But those 6 critical technology areas, that's specific to the Department of Defense. Research and Engineering looked at that broader list and said, for us, the warfighter, we're going to focus here and here and here and here and here and here. I think that's 6. The 14 items didn't just disappear. Look, they're still valid. They're still relevant. But if you want to know where the department's research and engineering office is pointing its flashlight, it's those 6 areas. That's your North Star. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Rick, I get it. CTAs are important. The department needs small businesses. There are programs, but what does MoveAmerica actually do? Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. But even if you didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway, because it's literally my job. Willie told us how RIA-Miami actually uses all this information.
We said, okay, where are our clients on which area of the critical emerging technology list, right? Because we felt the CTA was just too wide, too big. So we said, all right, let's break it down into the critical emerging technologies and to show where companies that we're talking to, where they fit in those one. And that's what you see as a pictorial, right? One, we want to make sure, remember, OSBP said we have to be aligned with national security priority, right? And we are, and we can see our clients are aligned in those areas. And that's why we client them, we did that. So David Knapfel, our lead on client engagement, he did this for us, and you can see where they're at in those categories, right? And we're still going to use that. So that's why, even though there's two lists, this list kind of helps us kind of burrow down a little bit, while the CTA list may help out our researcher, right, on that. But this helps us further define where our clients are, and that's why I wanted to show you how we use the CT list. And now you know the difference, right? You have a CT list, you have a CTA, right? This CT is still good, but the CTA is what they're asking the research to do.
So you see, they're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. They're methodically mapping every client against these technology areas. They're tracking alignment with national security priorities, and then they're using that data to play matchmaker between you and the right opportunities. It's like having a friend who works inside the Pentagon, except it's a whole team of friends and they actually return your calls. And again, because I will say this until I'm blue in the face, it's free. And yes, my face is now blue. All right, let's go ahead and land this plane. If you're a small business with technology that could serve national security, whether that's AI, quantum sensing, hypersonics, cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, or something we haven't even thought of yet, you need to understand these critical technology areas, not because they're contract requirements, but because they're a roadmap, a treasure map, a giant neon sign that says, the department wants innovation here. And if you want help reading that map, well, that's what we're here for. Hit us up on our website, MoveAmerica.org. Check out RIA Miami if you're in the Southeast. Look into our other accelerators. Sign up for webinars. We've got sessions on mentor-protege programs, consortia development, CMMC compliance, and more acronyms than you can shake a DD-254 at. Because here's the bottom line. The Department of Defense needs you. Not in a we're saying this to be nice kind of way. In a we went from 51 prime contractors to 5 and that's terrifying way. They are actively, desperately, with great enthusiasm looking for new players, new ideas, and new solutions. The door is open, the welcome mat is out, and there are warm chocolate chip cookies sitting on the counter. We're here to help you walk through that door, get inside that kitchen, grab one of those cookies without tripping on a whole bunch of acronyms. So thanks for spending this time with me. This is Rick from MoveAmerica, and this has been Pathways to Partnership. Now go out there and build something amazing. And then make sure you give us a call so, we can help you sell it to the Pentagon.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views or positions of MoveAmerica or its affiliates. Always consult with a qualified professional for advice specific to your circumstances. For more information about MoveAmerica and our mission to strengthen the defense industrial base through innovation and collaboration, visit us at www.moveamerica.org. Thank you for tuning in to Pathways to Partnership, powered by MoveAmerica. Until next time, stay inspired, stay innovative, and we'll speak with you soon.